Greetings, I am Gresham's et al. And welcome back to Gresham Reads Monster Blood Tattoo, Book 1, Foundling, by D.M. Cornish. So in the last one, we learned a little bit more of the history and the layout of the world to an extent. And suffice to say, this world is incredibly intriguing. Very interesting to see what it holds. At the very least in this portion of the world that Rosamund is living in. As well as learning of monster hunters and individuals known as Sedorners, or monster lovers. But I think it is more complex than that. But perhaps that is something we will learn another day. Because apparently Franzatat is one who slayed a monster. And he appears to be very regretful of said act. So I'm curious as to what happened. Also, sorry, I do have some food with me at the moment. It is just merely something to hydrate me, as well as to keep me cool. But either way, let us begin and see why Rosamund has been called up to the office of, where is it? Madame Oprah's school. Let's see, the definition provided for us today is Sthenicon, a noun. A simple wooden box with leather straps and buckles that fasten it to the wearer's head, covering the mouth, nose, and eyes. Inside it are various small organs, folded up nasal membranes, and complicated bundles of optic nerves that let the wearer smell tiny, hidden, or far-off smells, and see into the shadows in the dark, or a great distance away. Used mostly by Leers. If a Sthenicon is worn for too long, the organs within can grow into the wearer's nose. If this happens, removing it can be difficult and very painful. Interesting. Meaning if you wear it too long, it may become permanently bound to you. Very intriguing. But either way, let us begin. Chapter 3, The Lamplighter's Agent. Down many well-trodden flights of creaking, wobbling wood or frigid and slippery slate stairs, Rosamund went. Through the all-too-familiar narrows of the Foundlingeries, halls and passages, all the way down to the emerald-painted door of Madame Oprah's downstairs apartments. Children were normally summoned to the Madame's sacred apartments only when in the worst kind of trouble. Rosamund's head spun. Am I in trouble after all? Was it just chance that the stranger happened to be there? He stood in the musty parlor before the green door, where all comers were to wait until summoned. Tap, tap went the boyish knuckles on this hard wooden portal. He was led in immediately by the manservant Carp. Within, the madam sat like some august queen, almost obscure by the piles of loose papers, ledgers, and registers that rose in clumsy stacks upon either side of her solid blackwood desk. Her chestnut hair had been knotted high into a hive of snaking coils. She had clearly gone to some lengths with her appearance. The stranger was there, standing silently by the desk. He wore a dark coachman's cloak that hid all other attire, even his boots, and he held in his hand an excessively tall tricorner hat of fine black felt known as a thrice high. There was something wrong with his eyes. Not wanting to be caught staring, Rosamund flickered his attention between Madame Oprah and the stranger's distracting orbs. "You sent for me, Madame Oprah," Rosamund croaked in a small voice, bowing uncertainly. The Madame beamed at him. This was unnerving. She rarely beamed. "I did, my dear boy. Come closer, come closer." A hand waved at him, the handkerchief it clasped fluttering like a small white flag, and filling the small office with the scent of patchouli water. "Today is a very important one for you, young Master Rosamund." Madame Oprah glanced almost coyly at the man alongside her, as though they shared a special secret. Rosamund felt his heart beat faster. "Mr. Sebastopol here has come as an agent, all the way from High Vesting." "Oh, excuse me." "And has declared that he would very much like to meet you." Madame Oprah stood, an action which made the stranger straighten automatically. "Mr. Sebastopol, I would like to meet young Master Rosamund." "Young Master Rosamund, Mr. Sebastopol." She curtsied as she offered these greetings, her arms stretching out to encompass her two guests. The stranger nodded, the corner of his mouth twisting slightly. "Rosamund. What a, fine name for, I am told, a fine lad." Adults were often remarking on his name, and it was by these reactions that instinctively Rosamund would gauge a person's trustworthiness. Had he not been unsettled by the stranger's eyes, he might have thought this Mr. Sebastopol was subtly mocking him. Rosamund dared one quick, determined stare. A thrill spread through his entire body. The man's eyes were completely the wrong color. What should have been white were blood red, and his irises were the palest, most piercing blue. This man in front of him was a leer. "Mr. Sebastopol." Rosamund bowed awkwardly. For a moment he could hardly think. Everything he knew about these men was now tumbling through his brain in much the same confused way as the 100 rules of Hirundo. Leers were trackers of men, and even more so of monsters. They drenched their eyes with the forbidden chemicals to enable them to see into things, through things, to spy on hidden things, to tell even if a person was lying. Rosamund gulped, unable to help himself. He looked surreptitiously for the man's... Forgive me, my tongue decided to get into a twist there. For the man's sthenocon. He was fascinated by them and longed to try one on. It was a rare thing to meet a leer in the city, and Rosamund had certainly never encountered one before. What could a leer want with me? This fellow had come from High Vesting. Let's drop the, let's drop something. From High Vesting, Madame Oprah had said. High Vesting was one of Boschenberg's colonies and the harbor of her naval fleet. Perhaps this terrible-eyed stranger worked for the Navy. Rosamund tried to quell the rising excitement that threatened to overwhelm him. Oh, to become a vinegaroon. That was his heart's desire. Madame Oprah continued gravely. Now, Rosamund, Mr. Sebastopol is here to offer you a chance for employment. An opportunity I understand you very much desire. I want you to take his proposal seriously and consider well what a fine offer this is. Please, go on, sir. She waved her hand ingratiatingly. Mr. Sebastopol cleared his throat and narrowed his intense eyes. Well, young Master Rosamund, I have come to represent my masters in Winstermill and High Vesting, who in their turn represent their masters, who represent their master, that is, the Emperor himself. Rosamund was impressed. Somehow he could tell that Mr. Sebastopol had meant for him to be. I am told you are of quick eye, good with letters, and know a little of the chemistry. Would you agree this is so? Rosamund hesitated. This did not quite sound like the Navy. I suppose I would, sir. Mr. Sebastopol continued. Very good. You see, our imperial charge, handed even from the great imperial capital of Clementine itself, is the care, the maintenance, and the clear passage of one of our most imperial masters' highroads, the conduit Vermis, which follows its course from Winstermill through the Icormere. Icormere. That some called the glue pot, and on eastward to the far-famed Worms. Rosamund blinked. This definitely was not the Navy. I have come to offer you the employment of a lifetime, that is, to work the lamps with us and tread the paths of this great highway to keep it safe for all happy travelers. In short, we would like you to become a lamplighter. I am pleased to say that this good lady, Madame Opera, he half turned his body and gave a slight bow toward the woman, agrees you would be excellent for the job. Something about the way the lamplighter's agent settled this sounded very final. Rosamund's head was spinning once more. A lamplighter? They wanted him to become a lamplighter. What happened to the Navy? Now he would never see the sea. Rosamund tried his best to look grateful. This was not the plan at all. Stuck on the same stretch of road day after day, night after night, lighting the lamps, dousing them again, lighting them again. No chance for prize money, no chance for glory. Could it get worse? He had no choice. It was either become a lamplighter or stay at the Foundling. A glance at Madame Opera showed her genial expression become stiff with impatience. He was stuck between two very unpleasant choices. The stone and the sty, as Master Francetot might say. Thank you, Master Sebastopol, he managed, giving another awkward bow. As you should. Madame Opera beamed and clapped once and loudly. Nothing about Mr. Sebastopol's face altered at all. He clearly had not anticipated the slightest resistance to his suggestion. Madame Opera stood and shepherded Rosamund toward the door. Go and ready yourself. Francetot will know what to do. Now, Mr. Sebastopol, he heard her murmur as she closed the door behind him. Will you stay for a sip of tea? And that was that. The necessary arrangements were made. Rosamund was to meet Master Sebastopol in 2 days' time at the Paterbeck, one of Boschenberg's smaller piers upon the mighty Humber River. His luggage was to be limited to no more than one ox trunk and a satchel. He was to be dressed in hard-wearing clothes for a long journey, and a sturdy hat, too. Unfortunately, he did not have any. Nor did he possess a suitably sturdy hat. Why is the hat important? Perhaps it's something of a social status? I'm not sure. I'll worry about it another time. As for the rest of his belongings, the collection of his entire life, they fitted neatly into 2 old hat boxes. For the rest of the day and all through the next, interested staff of Madame Opera's estimable Marine Society for Foundling Boys and Girls. I get the feeling after this chapter I'm never going to have to say that again. And I'll be kind of glad for that, honestly. The Vlinderstraat, Boschenberg, were a bustle as Rosamund was prepared for its great going forth. Even the Madame herself joined in, drawing up a list of what he needed, entitling it Rosamund's Necessaries. Master Franzatart and Crompolin took Rosamund to see Goldsman 5, the Galder. His was the best place in this part of the city to get any clothing sturdy enough for Rosamund's journey, for Goldsman 5 made the best proofing. All proofing could turn sword strokes and could even stop a ball fired from a musket or pistol. The simplest piece of proofing was costly, but the better the quality of protection, the higher a garment's price. Proofing was, however, also absolutely necessary for folk looking to venture beyond the city's walls, where monsters and brigands and other horrors waited. It was made from cloth, anything from hemp to silk, treated with a chemical potion known as gald, which made it very hard to tear or puncture. Broad straps of gald-hardened leather and thin padding of soft spongy pockweed were then sewn into the lining as the unproofed cloth was turned into garments. After this, the whole array was soaked in gald, and then cooked and soaked again, and so on. Each galder had his own methods and process, and his own secret recipes. Rosamund thought it was almost too wonderful to believe that he might be getting such amazing clothing for his very own. In other words, it's armored clothing. Or perhaps a manner of leather clothing. Very interesting. Alright, let's see. He was speechless with glee as he left the Marine Society. Goldsman 5's shop and the fitting room were a whole suburb away in the mortar on Tin Drum Lane, and the visit there would be a little adventure in itself. Indeed, any excursion from the Foundlingery was a significant event. Rosamund had been out for Madame Oprah's only a dozen times in his whole life, usually to go down to the Humor with the other Foundling to practice rowing and swimming. In fact, before today, his most thrilling excursion had been a trip to the house of Verline's sister Praline, in the shadows of Boschenberg's outermost curtain wall. Franzatart, Crompolin, and Rosamund went north along the Vlinderstraat. Not sure why I defaulted to that accent, but it feels right. Turning right onto Weeberug, and then left onto the crazily curving Pantomime Lane. They strolled past alehouses, dance halls, and puppet stalls, veered right once more onto Hurlingstraat, dodging ox wagons and omnibuses. Went through the Werkersgate, and there on the left was Tin Drum Lane. Goldsman 5's establishment was about a third of the way along, tall and narrow like almost every other building in Boschenberg. Only those of quality were allowed in the front of the shops, where there were plush closets in which the wealthy and powerful could try on and admire their new proofing. Such ordinary folk as two Marine Society masters and a Foundling had to use the poor man's closets by the great galding vats at the rear of the shop. As they entered this filthy place, Rosamund watched greenish-orangey-yellow steam hiss angrily from one of the vats as an aproned man poured in a thick black liquid. A foul miasma churned in the dank air. Franzatart spoke quietly but urgently with some grimy fellow, who spoke to another grimy fellow, who spoke to another, and before long, a finely dressed man in a powdered wig appeared from the door leading to the front of the shop. Though his simply cut clothes were made of expensive materials, he had a splotched and haggard look about his face, the mark of a vinegaroon. He was one of Goldsman 5's tailor. Franzatart must have known him, and from the look of consternation, the tailor must have known the dormitory master too. "Hello, Messias," said Francetot, a terrible light in his eye. "Coxswain Franz," Messias the tailor went pale. "Is that you? And with Crumplin too?" Coxswain? Rosamund had always thought Francetot had been the gunner, in charge of all the cannon and their right firing. "Aye," Francetot nodded gravely. "I've come to claim me debt." Tugging on the bristles below his lower lip, Crumplin gave the tailor a knowing wink and flashed an almost threatening grin. "Looky, Franz," he said softly. "He still knows us." Messias the tailor went even paler. After all these years? Aye, Master Francetot was as quietly menacing as Rosamund had ever known him to be. But I want it in harness. Bring us your best traveling wear for this here lad." There was an awkward pause. Rosamund was bemused that his two masters could be such overbearing rogues. With nervous sweat on his brow, the tailor hesitated. Crumplin folded his arms and glowered. Francetot remained perfectly still. Messias cleared his throat. "Well," he gestured to Rosamund impatiently. "Come over here so I can get thy measurements." Rosamund looked at his masters, and Francetot gave the subtlest nod. The boy went over to the tailor, leaving Francetot and Crumplin by the vats. "Lift thy arm," Messias growled under his breath. With the leather tape, he measured Rosamund's neck and arms, and even the girth of his chest with many rough pronings. "I daren't keep it back any longer." Master Francetot's voice carried softly across the vat room floor. "You dare not, And anyway, the lad's desperate to get on." "Aye, Pin, aye." The dormitory master sounded resigned and strangely sad. "Well, at least you'll be stoutly protected." At this, both the old men went quiet. Messias disappeared for a time, then returned with a sour look, bearing two pieces of high-quality proofing. The first was a fine-proof vest with fancy silk facings and linings called waistcoat. Waistcoat? I'm not sure. The second piece was a sturdy, well-golded coat called a jack coat, made of sudden silken threads of shifting blues. It came in at the waist and flared out to the knees. Rosamund was stunned at its beauty. A dormitory master told him to put on both the waistcoat and the jack coat. You might as well start getting accustomed to their weight. They were a little too big for Rosamund and heavier than normal clothes, but combined with his recently washed black long-legged shorts, or long shanks, he looked very fine indeed, and he could be sure he was well protected for his long journey. All he needed now was a sturdy hat. "Your debt is cleared, Messias," Francetot said low and serious. "I hope we never have the need to meet again." Without another word, the tailor hurried off into the shadows beneath the vats. Rosamund and his masters returned the way they had come, Francetot looking very satisfied with himself as they wrestled in veer through the jostling throng on their way home. "You've got yourself a stout set of proofing there, lad. A fine harness indeed." The dormitory master's smug grin broadened. "You'll be well safe in it." Crumplin chuckled. "Masterfully done, Franz. Masterfully done. Old Captain Slot would have been impressed." Rosamund had no idea what just happened. He had never seen Francetot so satisfied, so pleased, but he was too astounded at his grand new proofing to give any of it another thought. Verlin mended his two shirts and even his small clothes. She donned several pairs of especially long stockings called trews, which he was to wear double back from the knee for improved protection. 2 scarves, and 2 pairs of gloves were provided against the coming cold of winter. She also gave him his own tunery, a fork and spoon made of wood, a biggin, a leather-covered wooden cup with a fastening lid, a mess kid, a small wooden pail from which to eat his meals, and flint and steel for the lighting of fires. And we have a picture of Verlaine, and she does look to be a very gentle soul. From the larder, Rosamund was allowed to put into his satchel a block of cured fungus known as dried must. A whole loaf of rye bread, a pot of gherkins that sloshed and plopped quietly when it was moved, 3 rectangular slats of portable soup, hard black wafers ready to be boiled down to a bland but nutritious... if my tongue could cooperate. Three rectangular slats, a bland but nutritious brew, some fresh green apples, and for emergency or emergencies, fortified sack cheese. Traveling papers were arranged for him, a letter of introduction from Madame Oprah recommending Rosamund as a fine and useful boy, a waybill or a certificate of travel, giving him permission to move through any land or city-state of the empire, a nativity patent to prove who he was and where he came from, and finally a work docket, upon which his conduct would be recorded in whatever job he was employed. This impressive wad of documents was put into a buff leather wallet, along with, you could hardly believe his eyes, folding money to the value of 1 sou, in advance of his monthly wages, and the Emperor's billion. This was a shining gold escadrille coin, given as an incentive to all those entering in the service of their imperial and Pacific lord. Rosamund gaped at all this money that was apparently now his. Old Crumpollen contributed too. The dispenserist supplied several flasks and tiny sacks, declaring them to be medicines to invigorate both thew and wind, which meant his body and soul, and repellents to fear away the boggles and knickers. Rosamund already knew the medicines. He had seen them before, small, milky bottles, holding Evander water, marked with a deep blue... I forget the name of this symbol. It's like a backwards curved E. What is the symbol called? Is it the epsilon? No, epsilon is an actual E. Beneath the tiny letters CRPN, the dispenserist's mark. The repellents, however, were new. Beware the monsters, me boy. You've been safe in here all your life, but out there, Crumpollen gestured vaguely. Out there, it ain't safe. They're everywhere, see? The nasty baskets. Big or small, they're as mean can be. So just keep these produce safe and handy and you'll go right. Though I have to apologize to you for not being as fine a quality as a scald bruise. The dispenserist pointed to a cobalt vial. Right, this here is tyke oil. It don't smell like much to us, but it's good for keeping monsters away right off. A healthy smear on your collar and it'll stay well clear of you. Problem is, it also lets them know you're there, so don't go applying it willy-nilly. Only when you think they've got your scent. Then he gingerly poked at one of the many little sacks kept within a bigger purse. Though the smell coming from them was faint, it was still unpleasantly sharp. Rosamund hoped he never suffered a face full of it. These are bother salts, very nasty stuff, and the sacks are fragile, so have a care. It will give any boggle, or a person that matter, you happen on, a nasty sting if you throw it at them, bag and all. Frightens them off for hours, but also makes them angry, so be on your guard for a good long while after. And this is a bit of trickery. Krumpolin unwrapped a package of oily paper to show a large lump of malleable skin-colored wax. An odor or something like a very sweaty and unwashed person filled the air. It's called John Tallow. It smells a wee bit off to us, but it's a mile more appealing to the nose of a knicker than we are. Leads them astray. Poke a little lump of this in the bowl of a tree or under a rock and walk in the other direction, and you'll get yourself some space. He chuckled into his white beard. Wonderful stuff. A warning though, always handle it by the oiled paper. If you get the stuff on your hands or where else come to that, then you'll stink of it too and the rules will be ruined. Got it? As the dispenserist needed the wax, Rosamund found that, strangely, he liked the smell. He said nothing of this and took it all he was told very carefully, very seriously, imagining a world beyond the city's many curtained walls and bastions filled with all kinds of frightful beasts. Krumpolin lifted a bottle of brown clay. "This here be fourth and last," he said. "It's a null odor. I like to call it Krumpolin's X-Stinker. Master Franz and me wants you to wear a splash of it on you at all the time, no matter. Keep you safe from sniffing noses. Where you're going, there's no knowing where is safe and where ain't." The old dispenserist took up a long strip of cambric. The best way to wear it is to liberally apply some to this here bandage, then wind it about your chest, under the arms, just like so. He wrapped the strip around himself several times in demonstration. A good splash will do for a day, and 7 will last you almost a week. After that, I recommend you wash this and reapply more of me X-Stinker. Tomorrow morning, when ye be getting yourself ready, he wants you to give this 7 splashes and put it about you, just like I've shown. Understood? Rosamund nodded somberly. Anything to keep the monsters away. Krumpolin grinned. Good lad. He handed Rosamund the brown clay bottle, along with a piece of paper. That's enough. There's enough in there to last you for a month. After that, give the script to your local friendly skald. Make sure he's friendly, mind, to make you more. Along with all these things, Rosamund took his most treasured possession, a lexicon of words and simple perenginet, or an almanac for wayfarers, entitled Master Matthias's Wandering Almanac, or a dialogue of matter, generalisms, and habilistics. That is, history, geography, and science. Cleverly, it was waterproofed, both cover and pages, so as to be useful to any brave and literate traveler, no matter what the weather. It had been a gift 1 year ago, given on Book Day when the Foundlings at Madame Oprah's remembered the entry of their name into the Grand Ledger, a type of group birthday, and the only time their existence was ever celebrated. Francis appeared in the afternoon with a valise of shining black leather. Valise? Thank you. Voice kind of cracked there. Taking hold of it, Rosamund was at once struck by the bizarre sense that whoever had made the case had intended good things for its owner. It had a lock, and a key was fixed to a strong velvet ribbon of brilliant scarlet about Rosamund's neck. The astounding array of Rosamund's new equipment was then rechecked and finally packed by Master Franzitard, who stowed everything wisely so that it would not rattle or knock when moved. Remarkably, the valise did not weigh nearly as much as he expected it might when it was fully packed. I see, it's some sort of carrying case. Rosamund urgently wanted to ask Franzitard to finish telling of the fight with the monster and the secret things, and the shocking things beyond and behind this. He had the courage now that so little time was left until he departed, but Verlaine did not leave them alone long enough for him to venture a question. I know you weren't thinking to be a lamplighter, Francis said unexpectedly, but not everyone who studies law becomes a lawyer, kid. Lad. Sorry. Things may change for you yet. Past need not be as fixed or as straightforward as they might first show. He looked hard into Rosamund's eyes. But you've got to be especially wary out there, my boy. You get me? Rosamund nodded, slow and sad. Most everyone's not gone to be as understanding of you as Verlin here, or crusty old Crampollen, or himself. The old Cedar continued. Guard yourself. Pick your friends cautiously, and always keep wearing that brew you got from Crampollen. He knows his trade better than most. It'll keep you well protected. Francis sniffed. Take me words to heart, son. It's a wild and wicked world beyond here, and I'm loath to let you out into it. But out you must go, and you've got to be sharp and wise, and keep yourself from trouble. I will, Master Francis, I will, Rosamund said with all the earnestness he could muster. The dormitory master took something out of his pocket and passed it to the boy. It was a long and thin-bladed knife in a black leather sheath. A tool much like the ones Rosamund had seen fishermen use when cleaning their catch on the stone-walled banks of the river. As he gave the knife, Francis fixed Rosamund once more with a serious eye. Out in the world, a knife is an handy thing to have. Mark me, though. If you must use this here in a tussle, he said, wagging his finger, you make certain you means to, or else it'll get taken from you and used upon yourself instead. Rosamund nodded, though he didn't really understand. He had no intention of using the knife for anything but the cutting of food. To his dismay, Rosamund was made to have another bath, though he had only had one 2 days earlier. Make you nice and fresh for your great going forth, young man, Verlaine declared as she sent him to the tubs. Smelling like lemongrass soap, he returned to the dormitory. As all the boys were piped to bed, Weems and Gull, two of the next oldest, who would be leaving themselves next season, and who always did things together, teased him for his flowery smell. Rosamund just shrugged. Tonight would be the last time he would have to put up with them. Restless with dreams and worry of what was to come, and a keen suspicion that Ghostling might try some horrid final prank, he slept little that night. Finally, at the start of the morning watch, Rosamund was roused by a silent Francis. He followed the dim guide of the dormitory master's shuttered Brightlin, and bid goodbye with one lingering look to the dormitory. Snores and whimpers and sighs replied in unconscious, uninterested farewell. So this is what it feels like to be leaving for good, he marveled. Master Francis left him at the basins to wash his face and put on all the fancy new things that were waiting there for him. He was especially careful to apply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 splashes of Crampollen's Extinker to the cambric bandage. 7 days' worth. He wound it tightly around his chest, just as the dispenseress had shown him before donning the rest of the attire. In the dining hall, he found a breakfast of rye porridge with curds and whey, and sweetened with honey. A lantern sat on the side to light his last meal at the Foundlingery. It was as fancy a breakfast as he had ever had. Oh, excuse me. You okay, Darkus? Yeah, I'm fine. And it spoke of Verlaine's care. He was just a little sad as he ate alone, the tap of his spoon against the bowl echoing in the lonely dark. Verlaine's love would be hard to live without, but at last he was getting out. With the early glow of approaching dawn showing through the high windows, Francis returned. He came into the dining hall carrying Rosamund's satchel and valise. Time to be going, lad, rasped Francis, his voice sounding pinched and strange. Rosamund followed him to the vestibule by the front door where Madame Oprah waited. Standing before the front doors, Rosamund was granted his baldric, a leather if I could speak properly, a leather and cloth strap that went over the right shoulder and looped by the left hip. It was given to all lads when they were declared to be passing from boyhood into manhood. Typically, it was marked with the motto, the colors, of one's native city. This one was patterned in sable and mole checkers. That is a checkerboard of black and brown. The model of Buschenberg. Master Franzitart, solemn and still silent, put it on Rosamund and, that done, plunked a handsome black thrice high upon his head. At last he was completely equipped. Madame Oprah grimaced tightly. "You do look well set up. Perhaps too well," she added with a sidelong glance at Franzitart. She gave Rosamund a single pat on his head. "Step forward strongly, boy, like the hundreds have done before you. The world does not reward tears. Time to be on your way." Rosamund wrestled on the valise, fixing his new knife to his new baldric, slung the satchel containing the food, turnery, the biggin, and the repellents, and the rest across his other shoulder, and pocketed his purse of small coins. Master Franzitart held Rosamund by the shoulders. "Goodbye, lad," he said at last. "Goodbye, Master Franzitart. Tell Miss Verlaine and Master Crumpalin goodbye," he added. "No, on. Goodbye, Master Franzitart," Rosamund whispered. "Tell Miss Verlaine and Master Crumpalin goodbye," he added. Madame Oprah made a small disapproving noise, but Franzitart smiled and replied, "I surely will, lad. Now, step lively. New duties await ye." Rosamund took up his old stock and the peregrinate, doffed his hat as he thought a man might, and stepped reluctantly out into the foggy autumn dawn. As he turned to go on his way, he caught a glimpse of some children who remained, woken early and watching from the high windows of the Foundlingery. Among them was Gosling. Rosamund was certain he would be fuming with silent jealousy. Good riddance, he thought. He followed the Vlinderstraat towards Hermenegilde and the river district, quickly reaching the point where tall shops and high apartments obscured Madame Oprah's estimable marine society from view. His heart swelling with sharp, nameless regrets, he joined the dawning hustle of Soeningstraat. And that calls the end for Chapter 3. I will admit I did kind of fumble with some words here and there, but it was in good fun, I feel. To basically learn of this book and its world. I'm definitely intrigued by the story that D.M. Cornish will be bringing about. On the front of the book, if you have seen it, has a very intriguing silhouette of a creature on it. I wonder if this is a creature we will be seeing later on. If not seen, then at the very least hinted at. It's interesting to say the least. But either way, that's going to call it for this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like and a comment down below any, opinions you have on this story so far. And also make sure to share the video around. Your views do help this channel to grow and brings this channel one step closer to being a full-time channel, where we can record freely without having to work around work schedules and can stream multiple times a week, more than we already do. But either way, make sure to also subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell as well to be alerted when more videos or when Darkest goes live. when videos are uploaded. I should finish the sentence. But either way, I will see you all in the next video. I am Gresham's et al, and I do hope you have a pleasant day.